Hello and welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be going over some extended VBA or API availability inside of ExcelDraw version 6. If you've watched the previous videos on our API integration, you would have learned how to open up the developer tab, how to get the API into an Excel document, and how to properly use the functions that we had available. In the past few months, we've been really working on ramping up the API to make it more functional as far as what you can do. So let's go ahead and get started. If you have not done the developer tab yet, you can actually go and enable that by going to File, Options, Customize ribbon, and there's the developer tab. Now once you have that open, you can go to Visual Basic and that will bring up your VBA editor. You can also do Alt and F11, that will bring that up as well. So once you are inside of your VBA editor, we're going to want to include or import two separate files. And these files are automatically installed whenever you install ExcelDraw. Those are going to be in the install location. If you have installed it to the default location, it's going to be C drive, program files 86, ExcelDraw version 6, and then API is going to be inside of there. There's going to be two files that we want to import. The first one is going to be the VBA automation. The second one is going to be the example, and we're including the examples just to help you visually see what each function does. There's a typed out coded example with definitions off to the sides to help better understand what it's doing. So we want both of these included just for the purpose of this example. So import file, import both of these. And now let's go ahead and dive into these functions and I can show you what all they do. So the first thing that we're going to look at is going to be the example API functions. And these are laid out as simple as I could make them as far as explaining what they do. So the first thing that you're going to see, there's going to be a subroutine right here that is called create object underscore circle underscore example. So this is how all of the examples are going to be formatted and laid out. They're specifically said example, and then inside of there you can see different processes that we use to create this with the commands. Now, any of these areas that are in the green, these are comments, so they don't actually do anything. The main lines of code that is going to be used are the black lines of code here. And it's pretty straightforward. The most complicated one of them all is the create object, simply because there's a lot of different objects that you can create with this. And they're all laid out here. So whenever you go and create an object, you're going to want to replace the objects and variables here with the corresponding variables below. So that means that whenever you go to create an object, you're going to want to specify the object, what type of object it is. So a capital R is a rectangle, a lowercase r is a rounded rectangle, and you can see all the different options that we have there. The range of the data, so the XYZ data, the range of it. If it is Z enabled, so if you're going to have Z values in there, you're going to want to hit yes or no. If it is relative, yes or no on that as well. And the layer number. So if you want to have it on a specific layer, then you can do that. Now, as it says down here in the example, whenever you go to the range, you're going to want to put in the range as in the cell address, such as A1:F1, which means it stretches from A1 to F1. The Z enabled is going to be three options. You have 0 as false, 1 as true, or 2 as whatever is selected on the ExcelDraw tab. And the layer simply specifies at what layer you want it to be on. Now, if any of this gets confusing, we actually have it coded in to help you as you are plugging in your values. But let's look at that in a second. Right now, the first line of code that we have here is just randomly generating data. And what this data is, before you create an object, you have to specify the values of those objects, and they need to be placed on the workbook somewhere. So for anyone who's familiar with VBA coding, you're going to notice that this right here says the current workbook on the active sheet with the range of A1, which is this, is going to have a random value assigned to it between 1 and 9. And that is going to be set for A, B, and C. Now you can change this to whatever you want. If you want the value to be 0, 0, 10, it's entirely up to you. What this does for my purposes, or the purposes of this video, we're going to randomly create a circle just using this. And I'm going to put a break in here. We're going to go ahead and play this so we can see it. And as you can see, it's already created the first two. And whenever I push F8, it's going to create the next one, which is 3 random values between 1 and 9. Now, whenever we go down to create an object, the first thing we want to do is create the defaults. And that basically lets Excel Draw know, hey, the X value, Y value, and Z value are at these locations. This is the orientation that the computer has. You always want to generate the defaults every time you start a new drawing on a new sheet. Excel Draw by default makes every sheet its own drawing. So generating the defaults every time when creating a new sheet, it's a good idea. And what I mean by the program is actually going to help you, if you drop down here and we're going to add in GTED, which stands for Gray Technical Excel Draw, all of our API codes are going to start with this. Underscore create underscore object, and we hit space, then you're going to see that it's going to have a bunch of suggestions for you. It's wanting to know the object type. So you can very easily see, oh, the capital R means a rectangle, while the lowercase r means a rounded rectangle. And since I have C above it, that means that I want to create a circle. So let's go ahead, put C for the circle, and if we hit comma, you can see that it now highlights the next thing below it, which is the object range. Again, you can see that above we have the object range as A1 colon C1, which means it is going to stretch from A to C right there. Now, if we have a comma, you can see again it's asking you if it's Z enabled. 0 no, 1 yes, 2 is default. Then it's asking if it is relative or absolute. Finally, it is going to ask you the layer number. So the layer number goes from 1 to 10. Now this is a little convoluted because layer 1 actually represents layer 0 and layer 10 represents layer 9. It's a little bit confusing, but when you're programming it, it's kind of understood that with VBA, 0 means 1 and 9 actually means 10, especially when you're going through loops and things like that. So it looks confusing to somebody not used to coding. It is relatively understood in a programming language that 1 and 0 are kind of interchangeable depending on what you're programming on. Anyway, so this helps you out as far as to tell you how to actually use the coding. And all of the API functions are like this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit play. What this is going to do, it's going to continue the rest of this code, which basically says we're going to generate the defaults. We're going to select the values that I have up here right now, A through Z. We are going to say that it's a circle. It's at that location. There is no Z values. It is absolute, and it's going to be on layer 1, also known as layer 0. We are then going to set the orientation of the graph. And this is very important whenever we set it, because this is going to tell the graph, hey, this graph, we're going to be focusing on this point, which is basically the center of the graph. then we're going to generate the graph once it is done. So let's go ahead, hit play, it'll continue out, and we will have a circle populated right here. And as you can see, random numbers generated that went through a graph, generated our plot for us. That is how you create an object. And all of this fluff that I explained to you up here, all of it is irrelevant. All you have to do, make sure you have your values down, generate the defaults, say what the object is, set where you're looking at it, generate the graph. Might sound like a lot of steps, but all of these steps are there because you can specify and automate this entire process. So for example, some of the new things that we've added into the API, a rotation. So the next subroutine we have here is a rotation example. So using this right here, GTED/set rotations, if we drop down here, you can see that you can set the rotation degrees in X, Y, and Z. The stipulations for this is it needs to be an integer, which means it is a single digit number, and it needs to be in between 0 and 360 because that's the degrees that you can rotate in. Now, I have this example right here set up to center our graph so we can see a good rotation. It's going to be stepping 45 degrees into the rotation in the X quadrant. And then every time that we generate a new rotation, we're going to regenerate the graph, because if we don't regenerate the graph, it's not going to update the graph even though we updated the rotation. So that's why we want to add that in. And if I push play on this, you can see it is updating the graph in that rotation. The next one is a zoom example. Now the zoom example that we have here, it's going to first get the value of the current zoom, which I'll show in a bit. Gray technical Excel draw underscore get zoom. Then we are going to zoom out. We're then going to zoom in, or zoom in and zoom out. One of the two. It's going to go in and it's going to come out, back out. And then we are going to set the zoom back to its normal default. And once again, you have to generate the graph, otherwise it's not going to update. So this is a very simple command. Set zoom. And as you can see, the zoom is set 0 to 1000 as a number. Very simple. So you basically just type in your zoom and you hit the number you want. So let's go ahead and play this, and you can see it zoom in and out. As you can see, going in, going back out, and it should set the graph back to where it needs to be at. The next thing we're going to look at is to get the current zoom. So this is a very simple. We already did this up here with the get zoom, but this will generate for you the exact zoom that we have with our current graph. So if we push play on that, you're going to see that the current zoom is 13. Next, get graph information. So this is very simple. All you need to do is, if you want to get the X rotation, it is get rotation X. Same thing with rotation Y, Z, the current pan for X and Y. And they're very simple. It's just GTED underscore get underscore whatever you want. So rotation X, rotation Y, pan X, pan Y. And we can just hit play on that. It'll come up with a little message box for you, and you can see the exact rotation, zoom, pan, all that fun stuff. The next API function we have is the move. The next example that we have is the move graph example. This is very simple. It is just a random number generation up here that sets the random height, width, the top location and the left location of the graph that we have here. So this is very simple. All you have to do is gted underscore set underscore graph location and then generate the graph. That's all you have to do. All of this part here is just randomly generating numbers to move the graph around. So if we go ahead and push play, what you're going to see is the graph going to change size and it's going to move. Now the circle inside is not going to change as far as the zoom. So if the box actually gets smaller than the diameter of the circle, then you're not going to see the circle. So if we hit play, you can see it moved down here. It got a little bit smaller. You can still see the circle. Again, got smaller than the circle. There you can still see the corners of the circle. That's what this function does. And if we look at it, then it will break down for you exactly what you need to specify. This is useful in case you want to put the graph at a certain location. You have the top location as far as pixel location on the Excel document itself. The left location as far left as it is going. So the top location, how many pixels down? The left is how many pixels to the right it's going. So it's kind of opposite the way you see it. The height is how tall the graph is. The width is how wide it is. Again, these sound a little bit convoluted as far as location placement, things like that. But if you're used to programming in VBA, these make sense because that is how VBA takes objects and places them on the screen. So once again, if you have a background in VBA, this is kind of familiar. The next option is show or hide axes. So if you have this previously installed on your document and you have it opened up, then these booleans will work. Basically, they're true or false statements. I don't know if that's technically how you call them. That's how I've always called them because I've never actually went to school for programming. I don't know how you correctly say that, but that's just what I always called them. Basically, they're true or false statements, and you can have this be whatever you want. So for instance, if I drop this down, show or hide a, I want to make this true. So let's say that the axis arms, which is right here, gted underscore graph underscore axis underscore arms, if I have that set to true, then that means that it's going to populate the axis arms for me. So if I go ahead and hit play, you can see right there is the axis arms. And I can set this to false, and it will hide the axis arms. There you go. Same thing right here with the show or hide ground layer. Exactly the same thing. If I have that set to true, I can hit play, and there's the ground layer. I can also hit this to false and hit play, and the ground layer is gone. No more ground layer. The final thing that we have added in is the Export Drawing. So this was previously available in version 5. If I make this big, we can go down here to Export Settings. And this has been available for quite a while, where you can automate whenever you export. If you want to automatically export every time you generate the graph, or when you close out of Excel or something like that, you can have it set up to automatically export. We have changed this and is now incorporated it into our VBA API. So all of this fluff up here is simply these declarations as far as the export. So if you want to export Excel draw export file macro API, and then location, which is the path we have right up here, export name, which is what you want your file name to be, the file type, which it explains right here, DXF, TXT, CSV, or PDF. If you want to overwrite an existing file, and if you would like to open the file afterwards. So I'm going to have this be false. And I actually have the file location brought up right here. So I have the file location set to my C drive in a folder called test, and that directly correlates to our API that we have set here in our example. And if I hit play, we're going to see that it's going to generate a DXF with the file name test DXF export in this file. So all I have to do, select here, hit play, and if I bring that back up, you're going to see we now have a file located here. So if I double click on that, it is opening up on my DXF viewer, and we now have a circle. Same thing that we generated before. Okay, that is the current span of our API inside of XLDraw version 6. You can create objects, you can modify the graph, and you can export the objects as well. You can also bring out graph information so you can properly graph, show, move, rotate, zoom, pan. We are currently working on adding in other VBA or API functions, such as importing DXF documents and changing color schemes and things like that. Our plan is that by the end of our version 6 exclusive APIs, we're going to be able to have all 100% functionality from all features inside of XLDraw accessible through the API. We are working full force on the API, trying to make it as functional as possible. Thank you all very much. I know this video was a little lengthy, and if you've stuck through the whole thing, you're awesome. Thank you. Please consider liking, subscribing, and if you'd like to try out our other products, they are available as well. Thank you all for all of your support, and I hope that this video was helpful. Hi, I'm Kyle, owner and operator of Great Technical. Thank you all so much for making it at this point in the video, and if you are here, go ahead, like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a lot, and it lets me know that the content I'm making is stuff that you all like to see. Go ahead, leave us a comment as well. Let me know if there's anything that you would like to see in the future, or if you have any future updates that you would like to have included in our products in the future. I would also like to say that being a company owner, I am very proud to be able to support businesses and students. I am also extremely proud to be able to support content creators. So if you have a content platform, you make videos, or if you have a blog and you would like to reuse some of our content, or if you would like to review some of our products, go ahead and send me an email. My email is right here, support@greattechnical.com. Get in contact with me. We can see what we can get worked out. And until next time, thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day.